Ladies and gentlemen of Parliament, thank you for coming up for allowing me to speak today. Earlier, the honored leader of the opposition mentioned that, for his second point, he said that the tests are non-discriminatory because they allow every student the opportunity to prepare for the test equally. So even though the student may not necessarily be as intelligent as another one, just the very fact that he had prepared more than one intelligent student would allow him to do better on tests, shows they are better overall. I'd like to bring up the point that a poor student does not have access to preparatory materials like the Prime Minister had said earlier today, and that keeps it as discriminatory as before. Also, I wanted to bring up the point this time that the main problem with standardized tests is not only that they're unreliable, but they encourage lopsided excellence. They bring up that you are going to be measured on standards A, B, and C. And then the person or group, company, whatever is being measured, whether it be academic excellence, clean halls, anything at all, are going to be measured on those three stats. They're going to forget about X, Y, and Z. Now that's going to lead to an overall deterioration of quality of that person, of that company, and it's going to lead to overall failure. So they might be adequate or good on one side, but they're going to be terribly bad in another. Okay. You also brought up the fact that there is very low error in the tests themselves. We are not arguing that the tests themselves have high or low error. We're in the sense that, oh, sorry, we misread that you put in A whenever you put in B. No, it is taken for granted that, yes, the tests are going to be scored correctly. We are saying that the tests will be misinterpreted, that the tests will be unreliable for future success. Wow. Overall, I seem to have forgotten what I wanted to say. I am sorry, it's my first debate ever. Anything else good? Shoot. This is funny. Okay. This is going to be really embarrassing because I'm bringing it to. Shoot.
It's okay, it's incoherent.
Oh no, you're easy to understand, don't worry about it. The Prime Minister like asked me a question to get me started.
Oh, that's a lot.
On the notion that the idea that tests will be misinterpreted, doesn't that really come down to a fundamental difference in societal outlook versus the ability to argue the way that the test itself is scored? How is there a misinterpretation when data is being optically scanned and culled?
Okay. You're asking data. Well, data. Well, although is as we just mentioned, is obviously being easily analyzed, so on and so forth. Is there not a chance for human error? Like we're going to say that. Yes, John.
Is the government merely making the argument that human error, inherent in all activities that humans are part of, is the greatest reason for which we should not have standardized testing? I mean, I believe that an interview might have a slightly larger chance of human error.
Okay. No, in this case, I'm merely arguing that standardized tests, whenever applied via some scientist's interpretation of it, can go any which ways. It can assume that, okay, this guy is really a book studier, he works really hard. Yes, but that does not necessarily mean that in life in general he does. It might mean that on the one task that is considered extremely important, he does very, very well on. Whereas on another task where it might be secondary or tertiary, he does very, very poorly, which is not good for any corporation or university. They do not want to see that in their students. That goes back to an earlier point. I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point. And to your point that interviews tend to have more human error, well, granted they do, they tend to be based on a more, on the desires of the company itself, the people who are going to take the student in, take the employee in. So if that person does not fit in via the interview, they're going to learn that. they're going to see, okay, as I mentioned before, what type of person they actually are. They can see whether they're good, whether they are good natured, whether they are a very hard worker, whether they are serious, whether they are joyful. They know then what can fit into their corporate structure. An SAT test does not let them know that. As I mentioned before, it only mentions that, okay, I'm good at this one thing. Ben earlier brought up that students with tests with low scores can do very well in life, and you brought that up that the students with tests with low scores tend to not do as well. We're saying that the reason why students with low test scores do not do as well in life is because society interprets the test scores as being necessary to be high to be successful. So the company, when it looks at it, will say, we're not going to hire you because you have a low test score. It does not mean that you have a low test score and you can still do this well. That's the reason why we want to get rid of it. Yes.
In regards to low test scores, if people are only getting essentially hired by these sort of shadow corporations that we speak of, aren't we disregarding the ability of the fact that this is America, and if you want to go start a business with your shitty SAT scores, you can do it and still succeed?
Unfortunately, I'm not seeing the statistics about whether or not somebody with low test scores tend to start businesses and be successful. I have many tales of people who have just dropped out of high school entirely before taking an SAT score and still got a very, very high, start a corporation that became multi-billion dollars. Some students that went to college, if you go back, you can go to Rockefeller, but then again, there's no SAT scores, so that's completely irrelevant. Okay, no, that's gonna be that. I am an embarrassment to Lehigh University debate team. Please do not take me as a measure for everybody else here. I can assure you everybody else is much more qualified. If you're gonna make fun of anybody, make fun of me.
Jobber's computer isn't judging you.